Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. You're at the spot, the location, the place where the conversations are pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Today we have a fantastic author. She writes spicy, suspenseful novels about motherhood, relationship, and love. Her name is Zelly Ruskin. She's going to talk to us about her latest release. I'm excited. I'm encouraged to hear about her writing process. She's in the process of creating an audio book, what that takes, what that looks like, but her inspiration and her dreams. Where does she want this to go? Maybe a mini series, maybe a stage play. Possibilities are endless. Let's welcome her to the show. How are you, Zelly?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, April, and hello, Brains.
You are so welcome. I love authors. I love to get into the backdrop, just really about their inspiration. And, everybody says they have a book in them, but what's important is letting that creativity come to light. Tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
I grew up in New York,
Mm.
and I had no aspirations whatsoever to be an author. I was a social worker, and I worked in the field of adoption and foster care and sorted others. And there came a point in my life where I just had, like you said, there's a story in me that needed to be told, and started writing, and it became a passion and it became a career.
Did you keep journals as a child, or what was your writing process? Did you always kind of, you know, chip away at this and then
I,
all of a sudden there was a book, or just you got
I
the
had
inspiration and you wrote it all at once?
I had the diaries as a child, but really once I would say by the time I was in college, I did not. I didn't keep notes, anything like that. But I was the kind of person who, if you needed an essay edited, you needed a speech written, I could help you with that. I was good at that, and I can tell stories.
Yeah.
Um, I can, I sort of started writing like I talk. Like if I'm, you're sitting in front of me, I'm gonna tell my story, and I just started putting it down on paper. So I think that for me, it was just, I guess it did sort of become or originate as a journal. I was at a crossroads in my life and just needed to figure things out, and the only way to do it was to be introspective about it. And that's when I started putting pen to paper. Um, so it was cathartic in that way, and I did it in a fictional way. I did it as a book.
No,
And
and I like fiction because fiction is really fact. We just changed the names and some of the locations. But in your book and your characters, did you really kind of sketch out some real life experiences that you experienced?
I think everything that I've been writing, and this is not yours to keep, is my first book, my first debut, my first novel, but I've written other things that will never see the day of light. But
Why not?
I, oh, they were so they're so not ready. They will be reincarnated, but they will. My skills are so much better now. But for this book and for anything that I write, I sort of take one unusual or extraordinary moment from my life and play on that. So in this book's case, I was an adoption consultant, and it impacted me greatly, the work that I did. It was a lot of years ago, but it stayed with me forever. And the people that I worked with, and and the fact that everything that we did changed somebody's future really stuck with me. And there's so many misconceptions about what adoption is or who all the people are in adoption, the birth mothers and the adoptees and the adoptive parents. And I really wanted to give a different perspective. And I've always wanted to tell that to people. And I've always wanted that to come out. I just never had a vehicle to do it. And then totally unrelated to this, I had found a photograph in someone's pocket. I was in a relationship that was long overdue for expiration, and I'll write about that in another book. But in this case, it just really sort of, there was something very strange about this photo and why this person had this photo. And I didn't really care about the reasons. And I wasn't a writer yet. I just kept looking at this picture saying, there's a really cool plot in here somewhere. So what I did was take that piece and introduce it to my adoption story. And so everything comes from my experience, but it is, the characters are all fictionalized, the situations are all fictionalized. And, and the great thing about fiction, you can make anything happen to anyone. You can change the outcome of anything you may have experienced. So in this case, it was sort of like, okay, here's a photo that I found, and this person is lying about it. And why would they lie about it? And what would be the significance of it? And one of my kids challenged me to write a story that did not involve infidelity. So I was like, well, okay, infidelity sells, but am I really trying to sell a book, or am I just trying to tell a good story?
Right.
And we hashed it out, and that's, it fits so beautifully in with, okay, what if this was in the world of adoption? What would this picture be? What would it look like? What would the significance of, why would someone lie? And then I drew on, after I left adoption, I discovered that I had some fertility issues of my own. So that sort of threw in a whole nother bag of what ifs and what would happen. What if I was still working in adoption and I knew that I had fertility issues? Would I cross lines? Would I want to? What would happen to my ethics, if anything? So that was just like all of these little bits and pieces just really started to unfold into the story of Not
You
Yours.
find yourself in that line of work. I mean, there's a lot of social workers that do a lot of things, but you actually helped parents find children. And I'm sure that you could tell us some stories that would curl your afro. Literally, because that's a lot. Some people like to have closed adoptions where they don't want to, divulge who the birth parents are. Other people want open. A lot of people now are getting children from other countries. How did you find your way in that? And what are some of your experiences? I want to touch on that as we move more into the book.
Oh my gosh, it was fascinating. I sort of tripped into the job. I had gone for an informational meeting with someone, with the head of the agency. It was a family service agency. And it was just really I was graduating with my master's shortly, and she just was really going to help me figure out my course. What was I going to do next? What was I interested in? And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, things just sort of took a turn. She started telling me about this opening that they had in adoption. So it wasn't really what I had thought I was ever going to do. I wanted to be a child therapist. And but when she
Always
described,
had a yearning, though, to work with children
always
and support them.
always wanted to work with children, and that's where I was trained. And this was different. This was domestic infant adoptions, so it wasn't going to be really working with the children so much as with the adoptive couples and doing home studies and the birth parents. But it was intriguing. And the thought of, this is a long time ago, and most of what we did back then were closed adoptions. The open adoptions where you find a birth parent and you connect through a lawyer usually, and then proceed with the adoption from there, was just a new concept. It was just something that we were negotiating, and couples still had to come to the agency. And so we still had to work, have a hand in the process. It was interesting. I mean, for me, I probably had all the same stereotypes that everyone else had from the same books that I read, the same movies that I saw. But I,
Because you hear all these stories of, okay, these, and not, this is not any correlation to who you work with, but these unethical adoptions and human trafficking. And I mean, that's where the suspense comes in. And people finding their birth families after so long, or the lies that have been told, or twins
Mhm.
that have been separated. Oh my goodness. Those
Yes.
are, did you ever run across any of that?
Well, I actually, in researching this book, I got to talk to some people who were adoptees that were involved in some of the more known cases of the twins, and the agencies that did that. I had seen records, like there was a whole controversy about I can't even accurately describe it, but basically, I mean, I think that you're alluding to where they were taking twins and placing them with different families and doing studies on them for years, and so I had seen some of those records, and and the agencies that had been a part of that. So it was we I had actually like heard about that studying in college. It
Mhm.
was like, I knew that those studies had been out there. I never thought that I'd be working in the field, or that, I'd meet anybody who,
And that just seems, like some of the major network talk shows used to feature the
Mhm.
reunification of twins. And they said that they always had a yearning and a longing. They always knew that there was another part of them that was missing.
Right.
So it's fascinating.
Yeah,
So
twin stuff
progressing
is
and
great.
moving forward, tell us a little bit more about Not Yours to Keep.
So Not Yours to Keep is domestic suspense. It's told from three point of views. There's the three main characters are Billy, who is a 34-year-old adoption specialist who is infertile and risks going down a dark path when she starts dreaming about adopting her pregnant client's baby. Her husband, Tyler, who is telling lies, keeping secrets, and a woman who is a stranger to them, who is haunted by childhood abuse and is obsessed with creating a life with the two people she regrets losing the most, which would be the baby she gave up for adoption and the man of her dreams. There's a kidnapping, and there's chaos, and there's a link that ties them all together, and it may or may not have a happy ending. I can't tell you.
Well, would you grace us with a small reading, a little excerpt
Sure.
from the book? I'd love to hear it.
Here's here's Not Yours to Keep. It begins chapter 1 with Billy. The at-home stick Billy grabbed at CVS yesterday was about to determine whether she'd be a mom or confirm her fate to be an infertile adoption specialist with painful personal insight into her client's plight. She'd made herself wait the whole night to try it because the results were most accurate first thing in the morning. As night faded and a hazy sepia tone spread over Boston's little suburb of Mill Point, Billy could see outlines of the unlit houses nearby. Besides the neighbor's tabby cat crossing her backyard, she seemed to be the only one awake at 5 in the morning. She'd been reorganizing the spare room since 3. She pushed the reading lamp another inch to the right on the eucalyptus-colored nightstand, then fluffed the winter mint and peach patterned shams and accent pillows. About 18 months ago, she decorated the room with the painted blush walls to highlight the centerpiece hanging between the windows, a floating glass frame with pressed pink roses, peach orchids, Queen Anne's lace and eucalyptus leaves, her bridal bouquet. Billy gently touched the smooth frame. Her mother created the piece of art, concealing her signature and the date, June 2010, under a flower petal. After 2 years, Billy still found new shapes and textures when she looked at it. Made bittersweet by the loss of her mother, she cherished the wedding memories, especially the image of her, Tyler, her mother, and her in-laws laughing in front of the Parker house, unable to oblige the photographer's quest for a serious-looking family portrait. Billy had known she'd wanted Tyler's babies as soon as they started dating. She'd fallen in love with the nurturing, jovial way he interacted with the young patients at the children's hospital where they volunteered. She'd adored the way the kids, no matter how sick, lit up when he arrived. And later, after they got engaged and were looking to buy a house, he was the one who made sure there were enough rooms for their future children. There'd been no doubt in her mind that Tyler was going to be an amazing father. Now, with 60 seconds before the result of the pregnancy test would be clear, Billy worried that at 32, she'd already waited too long. The couples she worked with often blamed age for their fertility issues. Because of her work, she dealt with the impact of infertility every day. The longer they tried, the harder she'd hoped it wouldn't be her and Tyler's fate. Billy remembered the shared anticipation 1 year ago as she and Tyler sat on the edge of the bed holding hands, waiting for the minutes to tick by. Then he'd counted to 3, so they looked at the results together. They'd both laughed and cried when they saw the plus sign and then made love. In the 6 hours they waited for a nurse appointment at the gynecologist's office, they dared to turn their dreams into plans. Each soared with confidence as Tyler went to work and she went for an official pregnancy test. Billy's gynecologist, who she'd referred to for the first time as her OB, had confirmed the pregnancy. The cramping and bleeding began within 24 hours. With it came the loss and grief that eased over time but hadn't been forgotten. The fear that it would happen again was still tangible. Although their spontaneous newlywed sex life had remained intact, there had been a collective holding of the breath every 28 to 30 days. The disappointment of not being pregnant had become more difficult to shrug off each month. When the timer went off, Billy slowly opened the guest bathroom door, looked at the little indicator window on the pregnancy dipstick, and rushed down the hallway. Chapter 2. Anne. Anne set an old plastic saucer filled with water under her building's fire escape stairs and waited. In a few short minutes, Thing 1 and Thing 2, the twin black and brown tabby cats she'd befriended, poked their heads around the corner. Thing 1 looked wary, but Thing 2, the bolder feline, paid her no mind as the duo gracefully crept to the bowl. Boston was experiencing a May drought, and the cats appreciated the fresh, cool liquid. Thing 2 licked his paws while Thing 1 took his turn to lap at the water. Then, when they'd had their fill, the cats sauntered back to the alley, their tails raised high. Animals had always seemed comfortable around her, and she preferred them to most humans. When she was in high school, Mama Sue said she was a natural with their goat and chicks and encouraged her to study to become a vet technician after graduation. It wasn't Mama Sue's fault her dream never came true. Mama Sue was like a fairy godmother. She'd sheltered Anne and her mother when they needed a place to live. She'd always put Anne's needs first. Before the fall semester began at the community college, Anne had worked as a day camp counselor. Though she'd enjoyed it, the little girls in her group had told their mothers she stared at them and hugged them too long. The mothers had complained to the camp director, who, in turn, had several talks with her. She tried to rein in her compulsion to understand what it would be like to be one of their mothers, to know how it felt to hold a 4-year-old. It took a lot of energy to stop gazing at them, imagining one of them was really hers. After she got fired, she waitressed, but it didn't last long. Whenever she waited on tables with little girls, she would drop trays and knock into customers as she looked for the port wine birthmark that would identify her baby. Anne walked a couple of steps to her apartment, then went back for the cat bowl. She'd forgotten to take it in a few times, and her landlord threatened to evict her if she continued to feed them vulgar strays. She added the saucer to the pile of dishes in the sink and heated the teapot on the stove. Despite losing her jobs that summer 15 years ago, she'd begun taking college animal science classes in the fall. She liked them and believed she'd succeed in a career working with animals until the afternoon she and Mama Sue went to buy groceries. She followed with sweet little voice's rendition of the Itsy Bitsy Spider to aisle 3. A beautiful toddler with creamy, dimpled cheeks was sitting in a shopping cart between the shelves of cereal on the left and baking goods on the right. The little girl's smile broadened, and her eyes seemed to dance when she saw Anne looking at her. She understood now that the child had been too young to be her baby, but at the time she hadn't slowed down to think. The pull was relentless. She felt a connection. The child's mother yelled for security when Anne pushed up the little girl's sleeve to check for the special birthmark. She'd sprinted out of the supermarket, and Mama Sue chased after her as best her pudgy body allowed. She pushed Anne into the car and sped them away, turning into an empty lot when she thought they were out of danger. Anne could still feel her fairy godmother's warm body embracing her and hear her soothing shushing. "It isn't good for you here," Mama Sue had said. "The community is too small, and even after 5 years, it's got too many triggers for you." I only wanted to look at her arm. I really thought it might be her. I won't do it again, Mama, I swear. You don't mean to, I know, but you're not strong enough yet. We must make some changes. You need to get out of this town. It'll be better for you. You'll see. When the kettle whistled, Anne poured the boiling water into a teacup, adding one of the generic tea bags she'd pocketed from some convenience store's condiment station. Sitting on the olive-colored love seat she'd rescued from a dumpster years ago, she steeped the bag in mindless rhythm while Willow the weather woman pointed to different areas of storm clouds on the map behind her. "This just in." It was obvious from the way the announcer paused and shifted his eyes that he was listening to someone in an earpiece. The screen switched to a live shot of the steps of a downtown courthouse. A smartly dressed legal team was making a statement about a high-profile case they'd won. Anne reached for the clicker, but before she hit mute, the camera lens zoomed in on one lawyer standing behind the podium, and she froze. An icy wave washed through her, and she paused the screen. Standing now, she looked hard at the chin and then the eyes, which looked right back at her. The shock pressed upon her. The teacup's narrow ears slipped from her grip. Kneeling in front of the TV screen, she outlined the shape of his face with her finger. With each stroke, images and thoughts she'd never want to resurface swirled around her. She knew that face.
I know that face too.
Yeah.
I think it's Billy. I don't know, Brace. What do you think? That's a great lead in, and I was there with you the whole time. I
Thank
had
you.
someone on my show a long time ago that she had 9 miscarriages,
Mm.
and with each miscarriage, her desire grew more and more. And the interview scared me because of the things that she would say, and I could hear the longing and the yearning, but I could also hear a bit of a tick. I was worried to the point where I didn't publish the interview for a long time
Mm.
because I had to process it. She would say to me, "Well, my body, I could smell my body rotting and it was decaying after miscarriage number 5. And he wasn't there to pick me up." She was married. And when I came home from the hospital, I called his job and asked, "Where were you?" Only to find out that he hadn't worked there for 30 days. Right. She didn't know who he was or where he was. She said, "So I started to lactate and I got so nervous. I called the hospital and I asked them, did they need a wet nurse? But I could hear something in her, Zelly. I was afraid she was going to kidnap one of those children. I really was, because I get goose pimples when I think about it to this day. But, you know, and I'm not telling a secret, Brains. I told her this. publicly. And she said, it's okay to share, and I said, you might want to get some support. You may have some postpartum. You got a lot going on. This is 9 times. Well, now she runs one of the most prominent um, clinics for women that have had miscarriages. And that is where she poured that energy to. But she said that she did need some help, and I could imagine. So, if you were a woman that's had to make a difficult choice, for whatever reason, it could be incest, it could be you can't afford it, your parents, your religion, whatever that is. Once you have a child, you never lose that connection.
Mhm.
And you're always wondering, what do they look like? How old are they? They're going to school. And then you, as the child, are always wondering, where do I belong?
Mhm.
Who are my biological parents? And sometimes, brains, you have to come to the realization that you're blessed because you were chosen. That's a special gift to be chosen in the right situations, because there can be some tough situations too. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to hear more about the book. And your voice inflection and reading was just magnificent. And just
Yeah.
was very smooth. The editing process is a beast. You write it, you know your intention, you know what you want to say, you know how you want to carry the story, uh, what the reader wants to find out, but then you get with an editor. And the editors, they do more brains than dot your I's and cross your T's. They make sure that there's a flow, that there's a synchronicity, that it makes sense, that you develop the characters, that you use beautiful, as I call them, $25 words to create a scene. Like you described the bouquet so beautifully. I was there. And then, at the end, because you gave the description, and then at the end, you said it was her bouquet. So learning those techniques and those nuances are huge, especially in a fictional novel. You really want to take the reader with you. What was your editing process like?
Well, before I took it to any professional, I mean, I made this as complicated as I could with different main characters and timelines going on. And because there's a lot that the past informs the present. And I just went old fashioned. I would print it out. I would take each chapter and lay them out on my floor, and then I would just cut and paste and switch. And
Oh,
um,
wow.
one of the things that I learned truly, and this is a lesson for anyone, I think, who is going into writing, um, let the book tell the story that it's meant to tell versus forcing the story that you want and where you think it's going to go. Because this book did not end up where, I mean, I think the moral of the story is what I intended, but it did not flow or end up in any direction that I thought it would go. And the characters constantly change based on how you edit and how you reshape. And then, taking it to other people who are all very well-intentioned, but they're not you, and they don't know your book as well as you do, but they know how to write. And you can't just, in this world, as a writer, you can't just tell a good story.
Right.
There's rules to writing, there's you shoulds and shouldn'ts, and then there's the commercial aspect of it. Is your reader going to enjoy this?
Exactly.
So
Because
it
you
is.
are giving birth. You're
Mhm,
giving
yes,
birth
very,
to a body of work,
very much.
and so you have to love that ugly baby
Mhm.
because it's yours. But where do you see this going? Do you see yourself writing a sequel? Would you like this to go to maybe stage play? Maybe
I
book
mean, this
series?
particular book, I mean, I would love, it's a dream, it's a pipe dream, but if you manifest it, it will come. I mean, if it made it to a movie or a TV series, that would be so fun. But for me, my grounded dream, once this is done, I actually, when I was interviewing people and learning about what is happening in the adoption world now and what has and hasn't changed. Like the laws haven't changed much, but the focus is less on, you know, when I worked in adoption, we were very progressive, and it was, you know, we're gifting, you know, we're making a gift, you know, you're giving your baby a family and all that. Now it's more really thinking about the child and the physical, the biological, and the emotional aspects of how this plays out onto the child. And in talking with these women, I really had the itch to write a different adoption book, like a second book on adoption. But it's like in my bin. But what I'm working on next, like I have so many plot ideas in my head. I could just write until I can't write until there's nothing left to write on. My next book is more about it's a twist on a woman who's fantasizing about murdering her gaslighting, greedy husband. But because who hasn't ever thought about that with their partner, whether they're the best partner in the world or not? You have that nanosecond, right? But in this case, she's not going to have a choice. But the twist for me, and much like in Not Yours to Keep, I like focusing on the mother-child relationships. So it's not really about the narcissistic husband, because that would just make his day. It's more, it's more about this character's relationship with her mother and what got her into this situation to begin with, and how that affects her choices and her parenting.
That's great. Now, are you a parent?
I am. I have 2 kids.
I have 2 kids, and so
they're grown-ups. They're not children. They're grown-ups.
They'll always be your kids.
They're my
But
babies.
you think back on that, what do they think about their mother being a writer?
Oh my God, they have been exceptional. I don't think I would have made it this far without them. From the minute I started doing this, they have been cheering me on. They have been my sounding board. They literally like have helped me figure out plot holes and what to do with them. And you know, like we'll go away on a trip, and instead of focusing on the trip, I'll be like, does this dialogue sound real? Like, you know, so it's, but they love it, and they're the best. I got extremely lucky with my kids.
Well, you are very lucky in so many different ways. So now let's progress to one of my favorite parts of the interview, because I want people to know you beyond your writing skills. Zelly, how did you get the name Zelly?
So when I started writing, I was in life transition. I was trying to reinvent myself, and I also needed some privacy. So I pulled this name out of Zelda is my religious name. And so I like Zelly better. It's just a little bit more playful, which is more like me. And Ruskin is a family name. I'm an amateur ancestry sleuth. So I pulled the name out.
I love the name. I love the name.
Thank you.
If you were an appliance in the kitchen, Zelly, what appliance would you be? You should see the look on your face. It's like,
I know there's like so many choices. I mean, if we're gonna be realistic, I'm the dishwasher.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. Why would you be the dishwasher?
That's all I do is wash dishes, dry dishes. I'm also that person that will wash the dishes before they get put in the dishwasher.
Oh, bless your heart. I'd be the refrigerator.
Are you chill?
I just chill. I just chill. And when it gets too intense, I'm gonna freeze you out.
I love that.
That was good. If you could travel, time travel, if you could go back to the past, stay here in the present, or project to the future, where would you land?
Okay, well, the future, I don't want to be around for our future at this point. Not happy where we're going.
Things are changing.
Things are, you know, let's work on this brains. You know, it's an interesting question. I've always been fascinated with the Victorian era. It just seems, something about it seems so romantic. But the truth is, if I did time travel, I'd go back before the internet and
Mm,
before all the gadgets and
yeah.
go back to having imagination and conversations and looking people in the eye when you talk.
I'm so futuristic. I want to be in 3000. I do. I want to see how they're wearing their hair. You know, how are you making love? Are you just touching each other's nose?
You're not touching anything, you're doing it virtually.
Right. Through AI,
Wait, that's not even the future. That's happening now.
That's happening right now. Absolutely. If you were an animal, what animal would you be and why?
Okay, that's hard because I love all animals. And like, if you're my dog, you have life really good.
Mine
And
too.
horses are magnificent. But I think the truth is, I'm a mama bear. I
Mm,
will do anything for my children. I will go to any length. And if you cross them or look at them funny, I'm coming for you.
I get it. I get it. I totally get it. I would probably be an elephant. Some
Mm,
of the same reasons, but they're big and they're majestic. They're great parents. Um, they're very caring. They're very insightful. They
yes, they're
never
much
forget.
smarter than anyone gives credit for.
Well, I had an opportunity to visit an elephant sanctuary a few weeks, well, a couple months ago when I was in Thailand. And I got to look directly in their eyes and we had a conversation.
I believe it.
We had a
That's
conversation.
cool.
And then I got to see her play with her baby, and the baby kept climbing on the railing, and she kept knocking them down with her foot or with her trunk. It's like, no, you don't do that. You better behave. You do this. So it was just really a beautiful experience, but I really felt spiritually that I connected with them. If you had an opportunity to speak to a group of young, inspiring writers, what would you say to
I would say hang on to that group. Community is everything in the writing world. You'll learn from it, you'll get support from it, um, you'll enjoy it. I think, this is not an easy world, and you live by other people's subjective decisions. So if you have that community you can bounce ideas off of, or you can share work together and boost each other. And I have found more generous people in this world, not everybody, but more than anywhere else. I mean, it's an incredible group of supportive, giving people.
Well, because they let go of their inhibitions, they are vulnerable, they're creative,
Mhm.
they're wanting to express themselves. So I encourage all of you to, if maybe you're not a writer, maybe you learn to play an instrument. Maybe you will be able to grow beautiful flowers. Um, Maybe you'll be supportive and work with young people in foster care. That's a creative outlet because they're looking for someone to support them, to listen to them, to ground them, actually care. And caring is sharing. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Zelly. You are the best. Tell my brains how to get a copy of Not Yours to Keep.
Well, Not Yours to Keep is available pretty much everywhere. Barnes and Noble, Amazon, any local bookstore should be able to get it. Right now they're on pre-order. The book comes out October 8th, so it'll be available everywhere in hand. And you can go to my website, which is zellyruskin.com, for more information and all the links to everywhere it's available.
Brains, I want you to run, not walk, because we've got to figure out what in the world is going on with Billy, Tyler, and Anne. Is her name Anne?
Her name's Anne.
I'm excited about this and the
Thank you.
audiobook as well. Brains, go love, like, share. Now I can't find my postcard. I know it's here
Or
somewhere.
use mine.
Look at that. Love, like, share, and subscribe. Go right there. Love, like, share, and subscribe. And pick up a copy or pre order a copy right now of Not Yours to Keep. We are going to run this interview again, over and over again, share it with a friend, and just sit back. Listen to Zelly read it. Close your eyes. Imagine it. Taste it on your tongue. Thank you so much, Zelly, for being with us. I appreciate you.
Thank you. This has been a great time. I'm so glad we got to talk.
Have a great day, brains. Pick up a good book.